You wake up with a fever. Your throat feels like sandpaper. Your whole body aches. What do? You take a pill. You check WebMD. Within a week, you're fine. Now, remove all of that. Remove the pharmacy. Remove the doctor. Remove the thermometer, the antibiotics, the vaccine that's quietly protecting you right now without you even thinking about it. Put yourself in a small group of maybe 20 or 30 people somewhere in prehistoric Africa, 60,000 years ago. You wake up with the same fever, same aching body, and there is nothing. No pill, no hospital, no 911. Just your body, your group, and whatever knowledge someone older than you managed to remember and pass down. How did they survive that? Not as a rare disaster, but as a constant recurring feature of being human for 300,000 years, with zero understanding of what a virus even was, or why wounds turned green and killed people. Let's find out how. Start with the most disorienting part. Nobody had germ theory until the 1800s, no concept of bacteria, no concept of viruses for almost the entire span of human history. This sounds like a disadvantage, and mostly it was, but it forced something interesting. Without a mechanism to point to, ancient humans became obsessive pattern matchers. They couldn't see the pathogen, so they tracked everything around it instead. Which foods preceded which illnesses, which water sources made people sick, which wounds healed clean, and which turned bad. Which sick person, if you sat near them, meant you got sick too, and which didn't seem to spread at all. Isolating the visibly ill shows up in other primates, not just humans, which suggests this instinct predates our own species entirely. Ancient humans didn't need to understand contagion at a microbial level. They understood it at a behavioral level, learned through generations of painful trial and error. Sickness near sickness spreads. Here's the part people consistently underestimate. Ancient humans weren't helplessly waiting to die of infection. They had a pharmacy. It just wasn't in a building. It was in the ground. Willow bark, used across multiple ancient cultures for pain and fever, contains a compound chemically related to aspirin. Thousands of years before, a German chemist isolated it in 1897 and patented it as Bayer aspirin. Same mechanism, different source. Then there's the moldy bread problem, which sounds like a joke until you check the record. Ancient Egypt, ancient Serbia, ancient China, all independently applied moldy bread or plant material directly to wounds and infections. Nobody understood why it sometimes worked until 1928, when Alexander Fleming rediscovered what certain molds already knew how to do to bacteria and called it penicillin. Ancient humans weren't doing chemistry. They were running blind, multi-generational trial and error on the entire natural world around them, and quietly keeping whatever worked and discarding whatever didn't. Honey deserves its own mention. It shows up constantly in wound treatment across cultures that had zero contact with each other. Egyptian, Greek, Chinese, and that's not a coincidence. Honey has genuine antibacterial properties, low water content, and natural acidity that many bacteria simply can't survive in. Nobody knew the mechanism. They just knew generation after generation that it worked. Before going further, understand this: a cut rarely kills you directly. The infection that follows almost always does. This is why ancient humans became almost ritualistic about wound care. Washing wounds with clean water when available, packing them with honey or specific tree resins, cauterizing serious wounds with heat, brutal but genuinely effective at stopping bleeding and reducing infections simultaneously. A technique that shows up independently across cultures with no contact at all. The knowledge of which plant stopped bleeding, which prevented a wound from turning bad, this was some of the most valuable information a group possessed, and none of it was written down anywhere. It lived in the memory of whoever had seen the most wounds and the most deaths, usually an older member of the group. Lose that person, and the group doesn't just lose a person, it loses its entire medical archive overnight. Here's something almost nobody talks about. Without any concept of immunology, ancient humans seem to have intuitively grasped that fever is often the body fighting back, not simply the illness itself. Elevated temperature makes the body less hospitable to many pathogens. Traditional practices around fever, keeping the sick person warm rather than aggressively cooling them, giving warm liquids, watching closely, rather than panicking and constantly intervening, reflect an instinctive respect for what the fever was actually doing, long before anyone had a word for the immune system. Illness was never just an individual problem. It was managed collectively, because the group's survival depended on it. Sick members were kept warm, fed, and hydrated even when they couldn't hunt or forage, because a group that abandoned every sick person would eventually abandon someone whose knowledge, skill, or relationships the whole group actually needed. Caring for the sick wasn't sentimentality, it was insurance. Today, you carry them through the fever. Tomorrow, you're the one who can't stand up. If you want to go even deeper into the secret lives of ancient humans, I just launched a full course called The Secret Lives of Ancient Humans. 10 modules, 3+ hours of content covering everything we never talk about on YouTube, including a full breakdown of ancient medicine. Link in the description. See you inside. Ancient immune systems weren't magically stronger than ours. They were extensively trained, shaped by constant, unavoidable contact with soil, animals, and each other. A far wider microbial world than most sanitized modern humans ever touch. This is also why isolated populations encountering a completely new pathogen for the first time were often catastrophically vulnerable. Regardless of how tough they otherwise were, immunity is built through exposure and memory. No exposure, no defense. We should be honest here. This entire system was brutal and it often failed. Childhood mortality was extraordinarily high, frequently from infections a single course of antibiotics would resolve today. This isn't a lost golden age of natural wisdom worth romanticizing. It's a functional, brutal system built out of observation, memory, and community, in the total absence of every tool we now take for granted. So, how did ancient humans survive being sick with no medicine at all? Not one single trick. An entire overlapping system, plants that worked before anyone knew why, wound care built on generations of trial and error, isolation instincts older than our own species, a group that treated caring for the sick as collective insurance, and immune systems trained by relentless, unavoidable exposure. None of it was guaranteed, but it was enough to get one feverish human through one more night, and then another, and then another, for 300,000 years, until finally one of their descendants figured out what was actually happening inside that fever and handed the rest of us the pill we take without a second thought.